Hello, this is an intro to the Judgment Miniatures game with an overview of the rules, how to play. So what is Judgment? Judgment is a MOBA-inspired tabletop miniatures game for 2 players. In Judgment, players take on the role of everlasting demigods, summoning heroes to the shadow plane of between to battle for souls, which sustain your immortality. Judgment was created by Andrew Galea of Gunmeister Games and co-designed by Jeff Galea. So what do you need to play Judgment? I recommend that you start with the Judgment starter box, pictured on the right, available at judgment.game. It is everything you need to play, including 3 gorgeous models. If you'd like to play online, you can play for free at wartable.online, and there's also a vassal module. Each player will choose a warband of 3 heroes. If you're using the starter box, I'd recommend that you use Thrommel, Rakir, and Bastion versus Marcus, Astariel, and Cruel. As always with Judgment, the choice of heroes is up to you. Let's take a look at the Judgment game map and talk about the elements of the Judgment game. Each player has an effigy. This is your base, and your goal is to destroy your opponent's effigy. On the map we have souls. You're competing with your opponents to harvest souls. Harvesting souls will weaken your opponent's effigy. Souls spawn from soul pits, and there are also neutral monsters on the map who are hostile to both players. Defeating these monsters gives a reward. Monsters will spawn from the monster spawn locations on the map. And shrines are available. Controlling shrines gives your warband a reward. How do you win? Your goal is to destroy your opponent's effigy. You can damage the effigy by attacking it, but at the beginning of the game it is hard to destroy. You will weaken your opponent's effigy by harvesting souls. Each round an unbound soul will spawn from a soul pit. Harvesting those unbound souls is an action that binds the soul to your hero. Killing an enemy hero also gives your hero a bound soul. Each bound soul weakens your opponent's effigy. If a hero is killed, the souls bound to that hero are lost. Each player also has a pool of fate. Earn fate by defeating monsters, controlling shrines, and harvesting souls. You can spend your fate to re-roll and to activate powerful abilities. You can re-roll any roll in the Judgment game, but reminder, each die can be re-rolled only once. If you want to re-roll, spend 1 fate and re-roll the dice. Before we dive into the hero's abilities, let's review some terminology that's common to miniature gaming. Engage it or engaging. If a model is within the range of a melee weapon, that model is engaged by that enemy. And the model that is doing that engaging is considered engaging that model. When you're measuring ranges, it's the shortest distance between the 2 bases. The base of your model is the circular stand that your model is on. Base to base. 2 models whose bases are touching are considered base to base. And within. A model is considered within an area or distance if any part of the base is within that area or distance. It is completely within if every part of its base is in that area or distance. Let's review a hero card to learn about the attributes and abilities of a hero in Judgment. On the first card, these numbers are the attributes of your hero. They represent your strengths and weaknesses. Rakir has a move score of 4 inches, which means that he can move score of 4, which means he can move 4 inches on an advance. He has an agility score of 4, that represents his ability to dodge attacks. And a resilience score of 0, that's his armor and is subtracted from the damage that he takes. Below are his skills with different types of weapons. Mel is a skill with melee weapons. His score is 7, and Mage is magic attacks. RNG is ranged attacks, which are not applicable for him since he only has a melee attack. This Soul Harvest score of 2 represents his skill with harvesting unbound souls from the battlefield. Below we see Rakir's attack. Rakir has 1 basic attack called Dagger, which is of type melee, and we'll talk about the rest of these in a moment. This section represents Rakir's health. As Rakir takes damage, you'll fill in these boxes to represent the damage that he's taken, or erase them when he heals. At first level, Rakir has 15 health. These additional health boxes are unlocked when he reaches level 2 and level 3. Heroes can have innate abilities, which are always active. Combat maneuvers are extra abilities that you can trigger on successful attacks. And active abilities are bonus actions that are unique to that hero. Finally, each hero has additional combat maneuvers, innate abilities, or active abilities that they gain as they gain levels. In this case, Rakir, when he gains level 2, he gains access to the Escape combat maneuver. At level 3, he gains access to the Invisibility active ability. Let's set up our game before we get started. Each player will roll, first you're going to roll to determine which map you'll be playing on. For your first game, I'd recommend playing map 1. Set up the map elements according to the map configuration. In the starter box, these will be marked on the map. Each player will choose 3 heroes. Then each player will make an initiative roll. The player with the higher roll chooses would they like to take the first turn or the second turn, or alternatively they can choose whether they'd like to deploy their heroes on the top or the bottom. The second player will make the choice that the first player did not make. So for example, if the first player chose to go first, the second player would choose which side to deploy on. Or if the winner chose the side to deploy on, the loser would choose to go first or second. Next we proceed to deployment. The first player is going to place their models within this gray zone. Note that you are not allowed to enter into the blacked out area. Once that first player has completed that, the second player will place their models in the other gray zone. Then each player starts the game with 1 fate token. Now we'll start the activation phase. The player who's going first will choose a hero to activate. Each hero has 3 actions per activation, and players will alternate activations until all heroes have activated. When you activate a hero, you'll be able to choose up to 3 actions. You can use each active ability from their card only once. Other actions can be repeated. The most common actions are Basic Attack, Advance, Charge, and Soul Harvest. Let's review these common actions. First action, Basic Attack. When you make a basic attack, you'll choose one of your attacks and a target. The target must be an enemy model within range and where you have line of sight, which means that other models are not blocking your ability to see that model. You can't use ranged or magic attacks if you are engaged by an enemy. Now we'll determine the number of dice you're going to roll. The base number of dice is based on the attacker's attack score, which can be their MEL, RNG, or MAG score, and subtract the defender's AGI score. So in this case, our MEL is 7, the defender's AGI is 4, so we'll roll 3 dice. We can also add modifiers to the attack based on the type of attack. For melee attacks, you can add 2 dice if it's a charge. You gain +1 die per ally who's engaging the target. There are also miscellaneous bonuses, such as Heroic Ballad from Bastion. You also get a penalty of -1 die per enemy who's engaging the attacker. And if the defender has hard cover, which we'll talk about later, you get -1 die. For ranged attacks, it's a similar process, but the modifiers are different. You get +1 die if you're aiming. You can declare that you're aiming at the beginning of your activation, but it prevents advance, melee attack, and effigy recall actions. If the target model is engaged or engaging a model, you subtract 1 die per model. And if the target is in cover, you subtract -2 for hard cover and -1 for soft cover, such as forests. Magic attack modifiers also suffer the firing into melee penalty and -1 die for hard cover. Let's go through an example. In this case, Rakir is attacking Cruel. Rakir's melee score is 7, and Cruel has an AGI score of 4, so we start with 3 dice. Bastion is engaging Cruel, so we add 1 extra die. Heroic Ballad is also applicable, so we add 1 more die. But Rakir is engaged by Marcus, so we subtract 1 die for distracted. And finally, there is hard cover in between Rakir and Cruel, so we subtract 1 more die. Now we roll the dice, and the results are one of these 3 symbols on the right. Or a blank is a miss. So now we're going to choose 3 of the dice that we rolled to be our result. Up to 3. If there's less than 3 dice, you just choose all of them. Damage is based on the number of hits in the dice you chose. So as a reminder, the J counts as a hit and a special symbol. So if you have 0 hits, it counts as a miss, 1 hit counts as a glance, 2 hits counts as a solid, and 3 hits count as a crit. On the right, we see the amount of damage done for different damage types in this weapon. If we had 2 hits, that would be a solid that does 3 damage. Next we subtract the res score of the target. In this case, the res is 0, so we're going to do 3 points of damage. Now we mark 3 boxes on Cruel's health. After applying damage, you have the option to choose a combat maneuver. Based on the J and S results from your selected dice, you can apply one combat maneuver. All attacks have the knockdown available if you roll 3 Js, which gives the knockdown condition, which we'll describe later. Basic attacks can also do the push maneuver, which I'll describe next, and some heroes have additional maneuvers. Here's an example from Rakir's card, where if he has 2S, he can apply the poison condition. If you choose the push maneuver, you can push the attacker 1 inch in a straight line for each S or J. On a melee attack, you also have the option to push the target. You can split your S and J results to push the attacker 1 inch and the target 1 inch, or any combination of 1 inch. And you can use the push maneuver if you have symbols, even on a miss. Let's show an example roll. We roll 5 dice, and they come up with these results. We pick 3 of those dice. In this case, we choose a J, a symbol, and a hit. Since the J counts as a hit and a symbol, we have a total of 2 hits and 2 symbols available. Checking our damage track, we have 2 hits, which is a solid, for 3 damage. And since we have 2 symbols, we can choose the poison combat maneuver, and the target suffers the poison condition. If you reduce an enemy to 0 health, that hero is removed from the game. The hero that dealt the killing blow gains a bound soul and a level. Monsters can also be attacked, and they are enemy models to all heroes. If your hero is pushed, placed, or thrown into a monster's melee range, that will trigger an attack from that monster, and monsters are not affected by the distracted or ganging up bonuses when making attacks. If you reduce a monster to 0 health, it is removed from the game. The hero that dealt the killing blow gains a level, and a friendly hero within 2 inches of the defeated monster may collect its fate bounty. Their warband gains the number of fate listed on the monster card, and the hero gets a free buy-sell trade magical artifacts action. If there is no hero within 2 inches, the fate bounty is lost. You can also attack effigies. In a 3-hero game, the effigy starts with 16 health. Each soul bound to an enemy hero reduces the maximum health of the effigy by 4. The effigy is considered to have Agi 3, Res 1, and can only be damaged by basic attacks. It's also immune to conditions. When your opponent's effigy health is reduced to 0, you win. Let's review the other actions. You can make an advance, and your model moves up to its move stat in inches. The path may not cross the bases of other models or impassable terrain shown here. You may cross over a wall, but you may not end your advance with any part of your base on the wall, so you must have enough movement available to move entirely over the wall. If your movement path includes difficult terrain, there is a penalty of 1 inch. If your path includes hazardous terrain, there's a penalty of 2 inches, and you suffer 1 point of damage, unless your res score is 2 or higher. In the attack section, we talked about these types of terrain that give cover. In order to claim cover, the target must be within a forest or smoke, or within 1 inch of other cover types. In order to claim cover, you must be able to draw a line from any part of the target's base to the attacker that crosses the cover. So in this example below, Cruel is within 1 inch, so he's eligible for cover, and we can also draw a line from Rakir's base to Cruel's base that passes through the cover. So in this case, Cruel will gain hard cover from Rakir's attack. The next action we're going to talk about is a charge. When you choose the charge action, first you choose a target. Then you move your move score plus 3 inches in a straight line, and you must end that move in melee range of the target. Make an attack against the target and add 2 bonus dice. Charging costs 1 action plus the cost of the melee attack. You may not charge over walls unless you have the Pathfinder ability. If your hero leaves an enemy's melee range via an advance or charge, the enemy has an option to make a parting blow. Make a basic attack with 1 bonus die. The only allowed combat maneuver is knockdown. Next, let's talk about the Soul Harvest action. You must be within 2 inches of an unbound soul to use the Soul Harvest action. This range is increased to 4 inches for soul gazers like Cruel. If successful, remove the soul token and the hero gains a bound soul and a level. Let's review the Soul Harvest roll to determine whether your Soul Harvest is successful. Roll 2 6-sided dice and add them. Then add your hero's Soul Harvest score, Add +1 for each friendly hero within 2 inches of the soul, and subtract 1 for each enemy hero and monster within 2 inches of the soul. If the total is 12 or greater, you are successful. As a reminder, you can spend 1 fate to re-roll this roll, just like any roll in Judgment. The next action we'll talk about is the buy, sell, trade magical artifacts action. You must be base to base with your effigy to take this action. Pay the fate cost of the artifact, and you can sell artifacts for the same fate cost they cost to buy them. Each hero can have only 1 offensive and 1 defensive artifact equipped, and each artifact can only be equipped to 1 hero per side. Let's quickly review the other actions that are available in Judgment. You can use the self-heal action, which costs 1 action and 1 fate, and restores 5 health to your hero. You can use the cleanse action, which is 1 fate and removes 1 condition. The effigy recall action, where you place your hero next base to base with the effigy. This action triggers parting blows. You can take the stand-up action, where you spend 1 action or 1 fate to remove the knockdown condition. You can take the bank soul action, where you transfer bound souls from your hero to your effigy. You must be base to base with your effigy to take this action. And finally, the hand over a magical artifact action. It costs 1 action, you can give 1 artifact to a friendly hero. You must be base to base with that hero. You can also use active abilities for your actions. Some active abilities have a fate cost that you must pay when taking that action, and each active ability can only be used once per hero activation. We talked a little bit about some of the conditions, such as poison. Let's review the effects of these conditions. The curse condition means that you can't harvest souls, can't contest shrines, and you don't affect soul harvest rolls. Fire means you suffer 3 true damage at the end of your activation and cannot heal. Frost means that your agi and move are capped at 3, and you get -1 damage on your basic attacks. Knockdown means that you get -3 to your agility score with a minimum of 1, and have no melee range. With poison, you get -1 to your melee, range, magic, agi, and soul harvest scores. And stun gives you -1 action to your turn, and you do not make parting blows. At the end of a hero's activation, all conditions on them expire. If your hero ends their activation in melee range of a monster, that monster will make an attack against the hero. Next, let's talk about the communion phase. After all heroes have activated, a new round starts. The beginning of the round is called the communion phase. This does not occur on turn 1 and starts on turn 2. Step 1 of the communion phase is start of communion phase events. Effigies are returned to their current maximum health and trigger the start of communion phase effects such as regeneration. Step 2, we're going to move unbound souls and monsters. Each unbound soul will move d3 inches towards the nearest hero. If there are obstacles, just move it as close as you can. Monsters move their move stat toward the nearest hero, then make an attack if possible. In step 3, we're going to generate fate. In round 2 only, each player gains 1 fate. Each player also gains 1 fate per bound soul on their heroes and effigy. Players also gain fate for each shrine they control. The amount of fate is determined by the shrine. A shrine is controlled if the player has a hero within 2 inches and no enemy heroes or monsters are within 2 inches. Step 4 is spawning souls and monsters. If there are less than 2 unbound souls on the map, a soul will spawn from a soul pit. Randomly determine the first soul pit to spawn with a die roll. After the first soul spawns, the next soul pit to spawn will proceed clockwise. If a monster was defeated, the monster spawn is ready the next turn. On the following turn, the monster will respawn from that location. In step 5, respawn hero models. Hero models that were killed during the previous round respawn base to base with their effigy. Heroes respawn with 5 less health than their maximum, and they also have 1 last action during the turn they respawn. Now we go back to the activation phase, and we proceed to alternate activations. The first player to activate in a turn is the opposite of the player who activated last in the previous turn. Repeat this process of activation phase and communion phase until a player wins the game. Okay, now that you've completed your first game, what's next? You can get the full game and model rules at judgment.game. You can also connect with other players on the Judgmental Facebook group and the Judgment Discord server. Check out judgment.game to expand your collection of heroes, monsters, and maps, and you can go up to 5 hero games to increase the level of challenge. This video is brought to you by wartable.online, where you can play Judgment for free. Thanks for watching. Please post any questions, comments, or feedback in the section below.